Okay, we want a nice clean fight. No, just kidding. But basically, it's gonna be pretty simple. Each moderator or panelist will ask a question of each candidate, or as a group. For each question, you'll have 1 minute to respond. Then, at the discretion of the moderators, they might have a 30-second follow-up question for you, or allow you to respond to something that another candidate said. You can ask me 30 seconds. Eric here is going to be keeping time for us, and I believe there's a monitor here that will show you the time we have left there. So we're going to each have 1 minute opening statement to start, and we'll go ahead and do a 1 minute closing statement as well. Yes. Right. So it's pretty straightforward. So let's just get started here. We'll just get started with Spees. We'll introduce candidates Spees, Lee Brand, and Doug Vagim. So we'll do 1 minute for Spees, and then we'll just go down the line.
Very good. Well, it's a pleasure to be here, and it really is something special when people come together in our community to talk about things that matter and to attempt to really drive values down into the way we do business as a city and as a community, because that is very significant. I'm running for mayor because over the last 30 years I've had the opportunity to work with business people and government people, people in nonprofits, people in churches, to develop solutions for complex urban problems. And it's been a joy. I feel like our city's at a crossroads, that we really are at a critical point in time. On one hand, we're seeing some incredible progress going on. We have 100 new technology companies that are incubating in town. It's incredible. Some very positive things. Did my countdown timer just go off? And we thank you very much. Good to be here this evening. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. Try to go your whole life story in 60 seconds for the last. Many of you know me. I've been at Tea Party meetings for the last 4 or 5 years. I've been in Fresno most of my life. I have a successful business called Wesco Equities and employs over 100 people in real estate, property management. I took that 30 plus years of experience. I was elected to the council in 2008. And for the last 7.5 years, I've put a focused business approach to council, a strong dose of common sense to unravel the mystery of City Hall and the culture. I think I've made a significant difference in how City Hall is run. And I think my success record at City Hall can be carried on to a higher level than mayor. And my vision is full economic recovery for the city of Fresno, to have lower the unemployment rate, to raise our wages and promote economic prosperity for all of us. Thank you.
That was amazing. I'm Doug Vagim. I had the honor and the pleasure to be invited to speak at the first Tea Party event in 2009. Not because I was the guy just hanging around, but because I was the guy that actually took on measures that would help the taxpayers. I have a long history of it. I'm the only candidate, and as a matter of fact, the whole state of California at the local level who's going to get the Howard Jarvis endorsement. They don't usually go down to cities and mayors. I'm proud of my record. I'm proud to support the people who actually pay the bills in this town. When we fought the water rates, I had to fight hard to keep them from raising their rates to a degree that was almost punishable. We got them reduced by 33%. We got a better project out of it. And the fact that I got sued by the city, had to stand with a potential losing $500,000, where would I get that if I lost? But we won all the way to the Supreme Court. So I'm proud of that, and I'll fight like that for you when I'm there. Thank you.
Okay, this is for all three of you. Why do you want to be mayor, and what do you think the role of city government should be? Please.
I want to be mayor because I see the opportunity to do some things in Fresno to continue some momentum that's been gathering over the years. I have been involved, as I said, with business folks, nonprofit folks, government folks to to create opportunities for people in terms of jobs, healthcare, housing, and community development. In 1992, when Fresno was in a desperate crime situation, my wife and I felt compelled to move from Clovis into the toughest, highest crime, lowest income neighborhood in Fresno. Since then, 40 other families have moved in, but more significantly, there's been a turnaround in that community. There's a long way to go, but we've had a community development corporation develop, housing has improved. To develop our Fresno community, neighborhood by neighborhood, from the inside out, without a focus on government, is really something that the mayor can champion. Thank you.
I was elected in 2009. I was 59, not exactly a career politician. Never really had any ambitions beyond being on the council, but something extraordinary happened that first year. It's like I had 30 years I got beat up in the property management business, and I had this energy level, this creativity that I've never had in many years, and I really enjoyed what I've done at the city. And I've passed 19 legislative acts, fundamentally reform fiscal responsibility, fiscal management for the city of Fresno. And I think this city has a lot of potential. We've been mired in double-digit unemployment, high poverty, high crime. And to me, the solution to change this model of the city of Fresno is, so again, my vision of economic recovery, getting jobs for people. And I think the only one here that has been a job creator for the past 37 plus years, a demonstrated track record, and I appreciate your support.
Well, I've been a job creator too. I just happen to be retired, so you can't say I'm a job creator right now, but I know what it is to sign the back of the check and the front of the check. The fact of it is I want to bring to City Hall change, real fundamental change. We have a dysfunctional City Hall right now. We have a City Hall that does not think it's answerable to the people. We have a City Hall that tells people that they have to do one thing or another. When they call them back to try to get support, that the City Hall doesn't even call them back. We have people waiting to get plans for 8 to 10 months because the City Hall decided, well, they can just wait. That's got to change. I want to have the ability for any one of you to be able to go to the internet anytime you want and get every piece of information as possible to any city council member, except those big three, the lawsuit, personnel, and whether or not they're going to buy property. The fact of it is, too long have we have a dysfunctional City Hall, and I want to bring fundamental change.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. The next question I have is pretty much related to the first one, which is, we'll start with you, Lee. What do you think is the biggest pressing issue for the city right now?
I would rate public safety and job development. And to me, they're intertwined because we've lost a lot of police officers. There's crime on the rise, primarily due to Prop 47, which decriminalized a lot of property crimes, the state prison realignment. But hiring cops and getting their presence in the streets of community policing is one major factor of deterrent. But if you ignore the underlying issue of poverty, 1/4 of our population has no hope. We need to find a way to get jobs to people. When people have jobs, they're less inclined to commit crime. So I think those two go hand in hand, and they really embrace the quality of life. Everybody has a fundamental right to feel safe in their neighborhoods. I don't care where you live in Fresno. And it's our job, our responsibility to make sure that happens.
Let's go ahead.
Thank you. Look, I firmly believe that there's a series of problems. Crime is never going to be the lowest on the priority. It's always going to be, public safety is always going to be the top. But we have so many other issues that we're not paying attention to. We just saw the city give away $1 million worth of property that they bought for $1 to a developer. Right across the street, a developer had to pay full market value of $500,000 for a parking lot, no smaller than the lot they gave that other guy for $1. That's got to change, folks. We can no longer sustain that as a city. We have a community that's lost its ability to be what I call a city where there are unanimous, proud people in it because we see too much dysfunction. I will end that. I want to bring back hope. I want to bring back invigoration and vitality to this community. Yeah, there is a lot of poverty, but we've taken the ability for those folks that have any avenues of hope. They're lost, and we need to change that.
Just a pick up on the last question, because my friend Lee, who's a great guy, said that he's the only one that's created jobs. My wife and I own a business that we started that serves medically fragile kids, and we employ 40 people. I've started and run organizations, multi-million-dollar organizations that have created housing, education, and healthcare in our community. But the number one issue in our community right now, as I talk to people north, south, east, and west, is crime. Crime is on the rise. 16% increase in violent crime in 2015. 25% increase, according to Jerry Dyer, and I talked to him just a couple of days ago, this year. Violent crime is devastating not only for individuals and families, but also communities. And unfortunately, many cities in our state and in our country are experiencing a rise in crime. In the early 90s, Fresno was one of those cities. We must promise ourselves that we will not go back to that situation. As your mayor, you have my word that I will do everything in my power to keep our city safe.
I would add that, when you're in the private sector, it's different than in the nonprofit sector. The nonprofit sector, to me, is one step away from government. Because you're funding from state, federal grants, comes from taxpayers. And the consequence of failure at a nonprofit is you lose your job. The consequence of failure at your own business, whether you're a one-person operation or have 1,000 employees, is you lose your business, you lose your livelihood, you might lose your house and all your assets. So I think I still stand by the statement, I'm the only job creator here.
We own an S Corp, not a nonprofit. And proud of it.
Okay, so the geniuses in Sacramento just passed a minimum wage hike in the state of California. Now luckily they were smart enough to make it take immediate effect so they won't get voted out of office or shot or whatever. So I'd like to hear each of your opinions about how this is going to affect the city budget, since that means that city employees also get raises, and since it's tied into unions, the unions go up, their wages go up based upon the increase in the wage. And what may or may not have to be cut or changed in the city budget to compensate for that?
I don't support drastically raising the minimum wage like we did. I think the only thing you have to do to be conscious is that look, a perfect world, you would know, you need know the minimum wage, because people would seek your highest job level where work was available. But we know that there is a society that we live in that's never going to allow that to happen. But the raise it to $15 the way they raised it is wrong. It's going to put less people in a job than could be in a job. It's going to keep the people that are already at a minimum level there longer. It's going to keep them from having the ability to move up the ladder faster, and it has a detrimental effect to our society as a whole. And by the way, the people that are affected on the low end of the scheme, who our minimum wages for, are going to find higher costs when they go wherever they go. So it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of.
Actually, if you could answer the question about how that's going to affect the city budget.
The city budget obviously will be affected because there will be an increase, but not to the degree that you think, because a lot of those folks are already earning closer to that range right now. They're at the bottom level of the entry level are there, so that will increase that. We'll have the city trying to figure out how they're going to keep those folks that right at the margin and they're already there, or when are they going to advance? If they delay them, that's probably what's going to end up happening. And it made city government they solve that problem really easy. They just cut services to you. No problem, yeah. It's the private sector I'm worried about.
So I think it has an indirect impact on the city budget. First of all, the minimum wage is going to impact all wages and continue to drive wages up generally. But one editorial comment that I read indicated that there will be 700,000 people unemployed as a result of minimum wage. In addition to that, it's going to be very difficult for employers to hire young people, high schoolers, that want to get their first job. Well, who's going to pay a high school kid minimum wage? And so what we may see is an uptick in crime, in truancy, in delinquency, in situations that fall back onto law enforcement. I am, as a mayor, as your mayor, I will work with other mayors who I'm talking to now to talk about turning around this continued sucking sound from the state, pulling our resources out of the city, up to the state, and then not sending them back. But instead sending prisoners, felons, back onto our streets without $1 to take responsibility for them in terms of public safety.
The recent minimum wage was a classic case of corruption, of SEI unions donating to legislators immediately after they voted the minimum wage, which will have a catastrophic effect on California, and in particular, regions like Fresno with a low wage base. I was in a meeting in the Restaurant Association last night talking about the consequences, as Mr. Spees mentioned. You're not going to hire high school kids at $15 an hour. You're going to take somebody 24, 25 years old with more maturity. And the concept you're talking about is wage compression. If I take a guy from $10 an hour to $12 an hour, the guy from 12 goes to 14, 14 goes to 16, and it ripples across the entire pay scale. I was in a meeting with the Close Unified personnel there, and they were talking about the millions of dollars it's going to cost the school system. Now the city, I think what Doug said is probably right, most of the wages are above that, but it impacts the community. You're going to have fewer taxpayers and more tax takers. And that's going to have an indirect impact on the city budget.
Well, yeah, well, thanks for mentioning me. I guess I think we really need to be careful of watching what happens with these cute little goose eggs and golden eggs that are planted by our friends from the left. They will have a detrimental effect over the long term, and we have to work harder to make sure that our leaders know that how much it's causing and a cause and effect. And I hope that you all can go out and just reverberate what's being said here. I think you all feel that. If we don't, it's just going to happen again and again.
Thank you. I know you folks have been asked this question a couple times at other forums, but I just want to follow up. The Central Valley Tea Party has been very active and involved and informed on the water issue. So there's an initiative that gathering signatures for out there where it would mandate the transfer of funds from high-speed rail and from Prop 1 to water storage. Are you folks familiar with that proposal? So it's basically first a yes or no as to whether you support that proposal or not, and then the follow-up would be what? For all of you, so let's start with who we have with H.
I signed that petition. I think that when you're talking about trains versus survival, it's a pretty easy question to answer. I think that in terms of high-speed rail, the reality is that Visalia and Bakersfield and others are competing for the jobs. So I think as mayor, you have to also think in terms of the potential of jobs. And so while with one part of our focus, we would love to see those resources move towards water. In terms of the very present reality right now, we would love to see those jobs come to Fresno. The thing that's disturbing about high-speed rail is that the actual building of the high-speed rail is under a project labor agreement, which basically means that none of those jobs can be accessed by our great local companies. I think that's wrong. I think those types of labor agreements that lock out our companies are absolutely wrong. And as mayor, I will join with what I think is going to be a growing revolt among cities who are basically suffering under the onerous requirements of the state without any resources coming back to us from those that we pay out.
Really quick follow-up. So your answer is yes, you support the...
I signed the petition.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll give the same answer in every forum. Yes, I would support it. I would say Mr. Spees at a forum about a week ago answered no to the same question. And the reason is obviously that water storage is the lifeblood of this region. Agriculture is the engine that drives this economy in Fresno County. And I believe the high-speed rail project will be a gigantic failure. It'll be a financial albatross that'll cast a pale over this state for years to come. Now, I'm elected mayor, and we have the high-speed rail going. There's a maintenance yard. I obviously support that, the jobs for the city of Fresno. I'd obviously support anything that would benefit the local economy. However, I believe this thing will never get past, maybe from Fresno to Merced, but I'll give the same answer in every forum.
I assume you want a 30-second response.
I've given the same answer each time. I signed the petition. I think that, though, there's another aspect of this, and so Lee, you're wrong on that. I did not give a different answer. I signed the petition, and I don't know what more I need to say. However, I think there's a Fresno State professor just recently, you might have seen it in the letters of the editor, is actually talking about the importance of recharge. And instead of looking to dams as our salvation in the future, to really look at using our aquifers as already pre-existing reservoirs that recharge can be a much less expensive, formidable way for the valley to create water sustainability.
30 more seconds for Lee, move on to Desiree.
The question that was asked at the forum, would you support a ballot measure that diverts money from high-speed rail to water storage? And unless I wasn't hearing correctly, the clear answer you said was no. You weren't hearing correctly. That was taped on CMAC. We'll see. All right.
And if you need an arbiter, I was there and I didn't say no. I'm not sure anybody's name But the fact of it is, yeah, I will support that initiative. I'm concerned that we have folks in water, and ag water, who will come out against that because they're so concerned they're going to lose their water part too. So we have to be clear about that. And the fact of it is, on high-speed rail, look, it's the French Panama Canal project in the making, okay? And there's no Teddy Roosevelt to come save the day. And if what they're doing to downtown Fresno is an example of what's going to happen if this project goes bust, I say finish Fresno first. Get it done so we can clean up and bring Amtrak over there, which we have had plans to do for the past 30 years. You know, we have switches in the warehouse to bring the Amtrak line over the UP line for 30 years. They're sitting in a warehouse. Well, get the thing done, clean it up, and then you go do whatever you guys want to do. We want Fresno up and running. That's what I want to do, and that's what I would do on a soapbox as your mayor.
Okay, give me the mic. Give me the mic. Now, these are two good men here. These are two good men. And maybe I was the one that misunderstood the question in the other forum. And you can go to CMAC and get that, but let me just say, I signed the proposition. All right? Water over trains. Can I be any clearer? All right, thank you very much.
I don't think you can be any clearer. All right. My next question is actually almost a follow-up to this, but not quite. We have the if I can talk here, BRT and the high-speed rail. BRT is the bus rapid transit that's going through right now, and the high-speed rail is going through right now. We're going to cut water out of the issue. If water wasn't an issue, and we weren't trying to take the money and divert it, would you support these two things, and why? If not, why as well? Did you support the bus and the train? I'm sorry. You did the first one last time? Lee, you're up first. I bet.
Do I support the high-speed rail?
High-speed rail and the train.
BRT.
Water wasn't an issue.
I was
BRT.
in 2011, 2012. I had a press conference with Andreas Borges and Clinton Olivier. We came out, opposed to high-speed rail. We came out with a list of 33 questions, primarily concerned with where diversion of local tax money, financial impact on the city of Fresno. And here we are, what, four years later, I still have an answer. So, no, I don't support high-speed rail. The initial proposal for bus rapid transit to the council was a $50 million loaded project, but I voted no. They were forced to go back. This is all paid for by federal grants. We had to reduce by $12 million. We adopted a Stockton model, which is a smaller bus, and it added Shaw Avenue, where we actually have destinations people go to, like St. Mark's Center, Fresno State, Fashion Fair. And I voted yes with that item. It came back to the council recently, $4 million over budget, and Steve and myself led the charge to vote no. Unfortunately, our colleagues voted yes.
Okay. No, I would not have supported the high-speed rail, but the fact that we've got it, so Fresno, as I said before, needs to make sure that it has its ability. When they leave here, before they go bust, our town is put back together because they're tearing out overpasses, they're tearing out buildings, or you go one place, a brand new building 5 years ago is now rubble on the ground. That's got to stop, folks. And I haven't heard a thing from our mayor on that. How much bad and worse can you make downtown Fresno than it is? And the high-speed bus is called what it is. I don't support that. That's building something with the idea that you hope they'll come. Hey, go to your project and put your intensifying development along your corridors, and then if they have a need, put your bus system up. The dumbest thing I've ever heard of is you can't even find a bus if you're waiting for it. You could go get a app to do about anything you want on your smartphone. You know, in Fresno, we don't have an app that you can tell us where our buses are if they're on time, and that could be done in 5 minutes.
So, in terms of high-speed rail, we've already determined the fact that water is a much higher priority than high-speed rail, and we stand by that. But in terms of bus rapid transit, I would say that the planning that's being done now, that's being done in these last several years to begin to give attention to transit routes and building the capacity of our downtown area and Blackstone Avenue, for instance, I think is very significant. I think that we are becoming a mature city. We've moved from being a small ag town to being a full-blown California urban reality. And the fact is that developers in the market are already anticipating this. In downtown, with the opening of the Fulton Mall, you have, as I talk to developers, every piece of land is contested. There are people going, the market forces on land downtown, in downtown area, and now along Blackstone, there are 3 new projects developing along Blackstone. There's some very wise things happening in terms of the careful development of new forms of transportation and building corridors in our community for economic growth into the next generation that are very encouraging.
I just want to clarify, so that's a yes, you're for the bus rapid transit, but if water wasn't an issue, you would still be against the high-speed rail? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, what do you believe sustainable communities are? And do you believe in the United Nations Plan for Sustainable Development?
No, to left. The fact of it is that's intrusion to the 10th degree. Who's going to manage that? Who's going to make that decision of what we in our local community want and what is good for our community? Somebody 3,000 miles away or somebody all the way around the world? It makes no sense to me. Now, sustainable community, there's a lot of, we've been trying to do sustainable communities for the past 50 years, 75 years, since the New Deal, since the Lyndon Johnson social acts. The fact of it is, a town doesn't belong to the government, it belongs to the people.
Amen.
And the people need to be the ones to do it. There are lots of folks who are enterprising, who can do it, but you know something in Fresno? You've got to stand in line and get out of and get in the way of those who have greased the skids that are hanging around City Hall all day. I've talked to too many young people who are trying to get projects done and they can't because, frankly, there's too many people ahead of them who, I guess, are part of that great big fan base of sitting there with all these $1 million projects. It's, you know, about 75% of it's public money. Did you know that? Most of it is. So it looks good on paper, but it's your money, so you guys ought to be taking the ballot for those projects, not the developer.
Sustainable communities are communities where old folks can walk the streets without feeling like they're going to get mugged, and where young folks can play on the streets without feeling like they're going to get bullied. And what that means is that all the systems and structures in the city are working for everybody all the time and nobody's left out. That's what a sustainable community is. Now, I've been involved in downtown but ironically, I'm not a downtown person. As your mayor, I'm going to be looking at Fresno as a grid of 90 elementary school neighborhoods, and every one of those neighborhoods is important. Let me give you an example. If you stand in front of Bulldog Stadium and you look to the east, you see the largest economic engine in the valley, Fresno State, really critical. You look to the west and you see El Dorado Park, and that's a neighborhood that has some significant problems. There are great people in that neighborhood that are trying to turn it around and doing some important things. But that neighborhood is important. Every single neighborhood, every FedEx package that's stolen off of a porch, whether it's at Woodward Lakes or a violent crime in some other part of the community, all of these things are important. And so my plan as mayor is to look at building our whole community as a sustainable community by focusing on driving our services down to the neighborhood level, whether that's supporting the development of after-school programs for kids so that they stay off drugs and out of crime, or whether that's developing community-based policing so that every neighbor in every neighborhood knows the name and the number of their neighborhood cop. Getting back to that neighborhood building block process of resilient, self-sustaining communities is what I think is a sustainable community.
Are we being held to 60 seconds? There's a balance between planning for a city, trying to develop sustainable neighborhoods, and going over the top and social engineering. And in the last 3 or 4 years at the council, we've seen groups come in, financed by the California Endowment Fund, which is directly related to Obamacare. And they're bringing groups like Building Healthy Communities, that sound good, Tenants Together, Earth Justice League, and a very radical agenda that includes inclusionary housing, where you have to put in a mandatory 20% low-income people, not market-driven. They want affordable housing to be put mandated in areas where not by market demand. So we have challenges not only in the city of Fresno, we have challenges across the entire country. And for my job as the mayor is to make sure that market forces, we have a plan to try to preserve older neighborhoods, to balance out growth in new areas, but there's got to be common sense, and in the end, it has to be market driven.
All right, so this is not to get into the whole debate or discussion about the debacle of Grizzly Stadium or Granite Park or any of this kind of stuff. Regardless of those things, I would like to ask each of you, starting with H, what investments, either private, public, or partner, that you would like to do in your first term as mayor? What would be the number one thing that you guys work on?
The number one thing is going to be public safety. As I talk to people who are at Champlain and Perrin, complaining about major crime taking place there, as I hear about people complaining about crime taking place around, and the homeless taking place around Clovis West, and some mothers asking other mothers, is this the new hood? That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. I understand why we had to cut our budgets around 2008. But what's happened is that we are now getting behind the crime curve, and that is a desperate situation. And if I'm mayor, as mayor, I will make sure that we restore our police department to a place where we can keep our city safe and that crime curve begin to go back. I lived through I can't see the time. I lived through the desperate times in 1992. That's when we moved into the inner city neighborhood. We cannot go back there. And so that will be my first and major investment.
Make sure I got the question right. The question was private-public partnerships. We've had failed partnerships, Granite Park, Net Museum, baseball. So the question is, what would be my first partnership?
So the question is, what investment, whether private, public, or private-public partnership, that you would see doing?
Well, I'm not a big fan of public-private partnerships when they're not managed properly. Grizzly Stadium is an excellent example of that. Met Museum, Granite Park. In fact, my first year in the council, I wrote the Better Business Act that said a city's going to be the lender of last resort because all conventional lenders have turned down a request. Then if we're going to be a bank, we should act like a bank, do due diligence. do appraisals, do refinancials, get personal guarantees. We didn't do that. And by making those kind of mistakes, baseball stadium, $104 million over 30 years. Granite Park and Met Museum, $25 million. Those are all money that could go to fund police. I agree with Mr. Spees. We need police and public safety at the top, parks, code enforcement, public works, potholes. All that money was squandered by ill-advised investment by the city, not only just the past 8 years, going back probably 30 years, Far West Airlines, a tortilla plant, a legacy of failed projects. We've got to be more responsible.
Next thing you do is eject your seat on it.
We'll work on that.
Look, when you talk about government and investment, that makes me nervous because that's the public's responsibility. That's the individual. Well, I think government needs to make sure that there's a level playing field for everyone. And I think that public safety obviously is a very important thing. And so if you talk about an investment, what does that mean? That means training, and that means surety, the fact that you're going to have a good force in public safety in your firefighters. You're going to have the ability for them to come out and make sure they get there in a timely fashion. Those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about investment. Investment into the fact that we have a mandate on you to do something like pay a water bill and that kind of stuff. We bring it to you the most efficient possible way so your water bill will go up by 3 times like they just did. Those are the kind of investments I want to look at to make sure that people's wallets are protected first.
I want to follow up on this topic of economic growth. We know that there's the water crisis. We're surrounded by ag. So beyond ag, what would, this is for all three of you, what would your plan be for economic development, industrial development, and to foster that growth in the city of Fresno? Try to be as specific as you can. I know a minute's kind of short, but what would, besides ag, what would you do to encourage economic growth in the city of Fresno?
The past year and a half, I've researched economic development. What does it take to be successful in the city? I looked at best practices of several cities. And about a month ago, the council passed the Economic Expansion Act that I wrote. It provides 3 levels of incentives that provide accountability for each one. We simply don't give the money away. There's accountability for abatement of development impact fees, off-site improvements, or performance-based incentives. I believe this is the blueprint that's going to be the marketing tool for the city of Fresno to use in the future. And it also includes other features, including the development of a venture capital fund. We have, Mr. Spees mentioned, Bitwise with all these entrepreneurs, yet there's no dedicated venture capital fund. There's a few angel investor funds. So this advocates for a venture capital fund, putting together the venture capital people, investment bankers, entrepreneurs, and all people connected to the process. We also, down to 2 seconds, I think we'll be successful.
There are plenty of places where a community can help invigorate and revitalize a community through its public efforts with the people making sure they have the ability to be at the even playing field. That's my motto. I don't want to put favorites. I don't want to pick winners and losers. Right now the city is picking winners and losers. We just had a project right down South Mall in which the city just gave the guy millions of dollars worth of property for $3. And right across the street, Bitwise had to go buy his property for full market value and pay $250,000 for the same size parking lot. That makes no sense to me. Mr. Brand voted for that, saying if that's going to be a good thing for this community. Well, that sounds kind of like the stadium to me, where it's going to be a good thing for this community. If that guy takes a walk, yeah, the city may not be on the hook, but you're going to have a disastrous project on your hands, and someone's going to have to come and pick up the hook. It's generally going to be the city, because it's going to be an eyesore for the community. Not for that private guy. It's only in at 10%, by the way. 10%.
You want 30 seconds to respond on that?
First of all, the city did not give away millions of dollars. In fact, the city at this point in time has given away absolutely zero. There's a escrow subject to the developer's building a mixed-use project directly in the left field of Grizzly Stadium that will have apartments overlooking the stadium, restaurants, office space, and is contingent upon a conventional lender who's going come in and say, yes, this thing pencils out at whatever, $2 a foot, $1.50 a foot. If all those conditions are met, then they would get about a $300,000 parcel of land. That's the only thing. The investment by the city alone, just on the increase in property value, would be about triple that the first year.
Time's up on that, let's go to H.
Yeah, those types of wise investments that allow companies to invest. The way that the Pullman Nees corridor was developed was a public-private partnership where the city got involved with private investors, and that money was paid back to the city based to the developer based on the occupancy. And so as occupancy takes place, I talked to a friend of mine, Tom Tate, who's mayor of Anaheim. This guy is standing between Disney and Major League Baseball on one side and labor unions on the other. Major League Baseball wanted them to give them the 160-acre parking lot that is worth billions of dollars down there. I mean, that's the type of pressure that he's under. But he did a very simple thing. He had the chairman of the business department at Chapman University come in and look at all the city regulations, eliminated CUPs, and all sorts of businesses started blooming as a result of the careful tending of the garden of regulation in the city. Freedom creates opportunity.
All right, my question is very related to this because, I don't know if you know or not, but I work with another gentleman, Brian Weldon. We work on flipping houses. And so you were talking about development. I want to ask my development question at this point in time. It's not scheduled, but we're going to do it anyway. What are you going to do to make this city, first of all, we spent almost 3 months waiting for permits for an expansion, not a new home, expansion in Visalia. I haven't had that experience here in Fresno, thank God. But what are you going to do to make it more friendly for building and zoning here in Fresno? And it is Doug's turn to go first.
First of all, I'm calling for privatizing the plan check ability so we can have the private engineers and the private plan checkers. We can have the city employees do the auditing and make sure that they're living up to the standards that we ask them to live up to. I want to move these projects along. There's no sense why we should have somebody standing in line like the story I heard. There's one guy in town that can do one particular plan check for one particular type of a project, and if he's sick or he's out of town or on vacation, you just have to wait for him. Makes no sense in the city of 500,000. So I want to streamline that. That's one way to do it here. The other thing is, Mr. Brand talked about that project not having a lot of public money. That's the problem is they always talk about the end of the dream first. But we got to get to the fruition of that dream. Often enough, stadium, Met Museum, etc. The dream never comes true. This is another one I'm taking. And there's $600 million worth of housing money that could go into houses all over this community that need upgrading that was given to this guy for one project for 50 years. That's wrong.
My credentials, as somebody who looks over budgets and protects taxpayers, is well established. In fact, many people in this room were here back in 2011 when the Hotel Fresno came before the City Council. And I'm the one who called out the Hotel Fresno for what it was: overpriced, overinflated, basically a foreclosure waiting to happen.
The good news is that market forces are taking over right now. Talked to a young developer, Will Dyke, right down on, he's the partner with Bitwise, with Jake Soberall. And I said, Will, I've talked to a number of developers, what do you want? He's a supporter of mine. He's a great, he's endorsed me, and he's a supporter. I said, what do you want? He said, I don't want anything. I don't start with City Hall on the second floor. I don't start with politics. I go to the third floor, and I've gotten everything I need. I talked to Ryan DeYoung. Ryan DeYoung with DeYoung Properties. He's a young man who is an entrepreneur and has, in addition to their residential programs, they have a project downtown. He said, one of the exciting things is we've got other developers trying to buy our property to get things happening. When market forces are unleashed and when that takes place in an appropriate way, prosperity happens. And that's the style of development that I think we operate under best.
I think every mayor that's been in the last 4 terms has tried to streamline the city of Fresno. And to a certain extent, I think they've been successful in certain aspects, but a lot still needs to be done. I'm the only one here pulls permits, goes through plan check processes, not only in the city of Fresno, city of Clovis, Sacramento, all over up and down the valley. So I know what it's like to go through the process. One of many suggestions would be getting engineers and architects pre-qualified. They're putting their license on the line, so why does the city staff have to go look, review the plans? That's one idea. Getting a pre-qualified meeting before everybody that's involved in the process to essentially lay out the groundwork where you got to go. That's being done in the city of Clovis, not being done very well in the city of Fresno. Online permitting is also, I also agree with Mr. Vagim that maybe the way to really motivate city staff, and part of the problem, in my opinion, is the culture, is maybe privatization to improve the process.
Hey, over the past 20 years, I've noticed vagrancy has increased immensely. How would you propose to curtail or solve this epidemic we're having?
So first of all, any city has to have a standard, and our standard should be that it's wrong for anybody to live or die on the streets of our city, period, end of story. The homeless situation is a challenging situation, but when you break it down, there's 3 different types of homelessness. One is those that are situationally homeless, people that lose a job and lose a house. Our city is very well equipped and does a very good job with the situationally homeless, whether it's churches or nonprofit groups. The second group is disability-driven homelessness. This is a little more complicated. It's mental health, it's addiction, and it's PTSD with vets. We are developing right now, have developed a thing called a multi-agency access point, or basically it's a one-stop shop where people can show up and get their stuff sorted out, and it's beginning to function well. As mayor, I would put more of those around the city. The last group of people are urban campers. And when we deal solidly with the first 2 groups of people, we'll get the aggressive panhandlers off of the street through enforcement.
I want to ask a quick follow-up question about that. So you mentioned these centers that you're putting in. Is that private funded, nonprofit? Is that...
It's all funded by the agencies and their budgets that are already there. They're coming together. The current one is at Mayoral House. And the rescue mission allows it to be a 24/7 access point. They saw 3,400 people last year. 850 people were placed into housing. 320 of them were vets.
Okay, one more real quick thing. So were you saying you put city money and state money into this, or would you continue to try and make the resources available, such as land, to put these up and kind of streamline the plans?
Right. The resources are available to do that. The last piece, the urban campers, which are people that basically want to use our city streets without rules. Those folks, if those folks are disability driven, they need to be gently, compassionately nurtured into those systems. But if they're simply people that want to use our city streets without rules, then what I will do as mayor is develop a registration system that assists them to live within parameters and gently pushes them back into the mainstream.
So you're saying government money?
No, we've got to get. There are cities that are doing things with street chaplains. The mayor of Albuquerque has nonprofits that are picking up homeless folks and paying them minimum wage to clean up city parks. There's a lot of things that have been, that could be done. Right now, they aren't being done. And as mayor, we will address homelessness and allow our city to be free of homeless people that have basically stretched now over all of our community.
First of all, government is not the solution for all our problems. 30, 25, 34 years ago. Why do we have more homeless people? Why do we have a society where we're failing? We're failing as parents. There's a high, like a 70% out of wedlock birth rate for black teenagers, probably half that for white. That's our society. There's no core there. Now, most of the problems we're having now with homeless is because of the state of California. Prison realignment. You get all these wonderful people here that aren't murderers, they're not violent per se, but they have drug problems. When you have a drug problem, you're stealing, you're breaking into houses. And we have Prop 47, the wisdom, let's liberalize. And Governor Brown has another one coming down our way. We're all being punished, so to speak. We have limited resources in Fresno. Part of it is a criminals problem. We need to arrest people who commit crimes. Those people who have got drug problems, alcohol problems, we need to find solutions for them. And I can run out of time.
You know, there isn't one excuse for one of those individuals to be out on the street. Having been a county supervisor for 8 years, I saw exactly all the programs that are available to them. You know, within 15 minutes, you can go to any county resource and get a housing voucher. It's apartments usually, they'll give it to you in an emergency. They always have some set aside. They'll qualify you for Medi-Cal, they'll qualify you for indigent care, and they'll always try to qualify you for SSI because that's federal money. Most of those folks on the street have already qualified for that. They're getting some resource. They just don't want to play by the rules because they have their own rules. And until either one, start cranking up the enforcement, and two, believe me, there are mental health problems out there. Did you know that Fresno County is one of the least per capita funded counties in the state of California? San Francisco gets 3 times the amount of money that we do per capita. Santa Cruz can spend $8,000 per individual in their homeless camps because they get that kind of money. We have to ask Sacramento. We sued it when I was on the board because you were losing our fund. I'll go get more money, but also crank up the enforcement.
Okay, this question is a little different. And I want to start off by noting that Paul did reach out to the 2 other candidates in this race. Notably, they're not here. One of the candidates, I could assume why, but this question has to do more with. I've noticed in politics, there's people I agree with. You know, 80% of the time, 75% of the time, 60% of the time. There's really not a shortage of ideas out there. What there is sometimes is not having the wherewithal to implement those ideas. So, you know, this is my personal belief. However, you know, you can comment on this as well. It looks to me like this race is going to boil down to one of you versus Henry Correa in the fall. So, you know, if you agree with that statement, if you don't, you can explain why you don't. What is the wherewithal with your campaign to take on Henry Correa and win in November? Obviously, he's going to be very well funded. He has a lot of support being, you know, he'll have the whole Democratic establishment behind him. The city, if I'm not mistaken, has a majority Democrat registration. What specifics about your campaign will enable you to defeat Henry Correa in November? Or if you think you can pull it off on 2/7, why do you think that's possible? So,
I would agree with your assessment. With 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, it doesn't take rocket science to figure out who one of the people will probably be in the runoff. And probably the single biggest thing will be the ability to raise money. And my budget is for between $500,000 and $600,000. That's just in the primary. So you're talking about $1 million budget because no matter how eloquent you talk, you get your message out. Unless you're Jerry Dyer with an 80% name ID, you need a lot of money through mailers, radio, and TV to get that message out. And it's got to be the message that resonates with voters. And I think I've demonstrated my time on the council, my ability to be an effective manager of the city, to be a problem solver at the city. And I think really, if you look at the 2008 demographics, they're very similar to 2016. North is going to be conservative, Republican, South, Democrat. It's the band between Barstow Avenue down to about Shields Avenue, running across east to west in the city. Those are the battleground precincts. Whoever has a strategy to win those precincts can win in November.
But you're right. More than likely it's going to be one of us, but more than 4. And the fact that if we get into a runoff, I think it's a whole different ballgame. So I don't think you have that problem that you're worried about. But am I going to have the resources that Lee has? No. But look, I took on the whole city and beat him. They spent $500,000 trying to put me in the ground. $500,000. They could have fixed that LA water breakdown in front of Poly Pavilion. Did you know that? That's how much money went to out-of-town lawyers. But I didn't go away. And I won't go away if I'm your nominee.
Well, we're definitely up against it. When you look at this recent election with District 31, the 31st Assembly District, $1.6 million spent on a special election that Mr. Perea approved for when his son vacated that seat, that should have come out of their own campaign funds. I am an underdog. My friends are able to take funds over from their campaign war chests into their campaigns. I couldn't ask for $1 before February 15th. But you know what? There are networks of people, good people, that care, community people that care about their neighborhoods, that care about their churches, that are joining our campaign every day. And that's the joy of being an American and being in a democratic process, is a sense of personal involvement. We are raising money. We have new folks signing up every day to walk precincts. We got to beat them.
I want to do a quick 30-second follow-up to you on this question. So, Doug, your battle with the city was a legal battle, not an election. So, putting aside legal battles, 30 seconds, why do you think you can beat Henry Perea?
Well, I think you're wrong about that. I think that whole issue of the water deal took every facet you could possibly think of. The lawsuit, the politics, the petitions, to get the people to sign in, to get the people interested, to back down the city, to get the Fresno Bee to turn around and do an editorial, who didn't agree with me at first, thought I was a nut, and the Chamber of Commerce coming around and said I was right, who originally thought I was a nut. I started alone on that deal, okay? If you don't think I can do that in an election, you're mistaken. That was a much tougher thing to do than running for office.
So, Lee, you said you're talking about a certain geographic area where you have to have a game plan to win. Without giving away your trade secrets, what plan do you have to capture those votes?
Well, first of all, I want to restate what Doug said, is that it's a totally new race in November. Henry, the parade's been around for 24 years. You have two parades building up name ID. Once we get into November, I've seen council races where Steve Brandel finished second or third and beat his opponent. I've seen Chris Batiste with 20%. His opponent got 45. He won in the front. It's a totally different election. But to be effective, again, you have to raise money, because unless you got the magic touch and or you're a movie star and you have that built-in credibility, you can't do it. But that area between Barstow and Shields across east-west are the critical battleground precincts that elect the mayor of Fresno.
Okay, thank you. And so, H, you mentioned, or alluded to capturing money with a network of connections. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, I think that I've had the benefit of working for 30 years with good people in networks and collaborative groups throughout the city, and those folks are coming around. But I'll just say this: we have to beat Henry Perea, and he will be in the general election. Lee and I have already talked about this. We've complimented each other, and Lee and I have agreed that, and I'm sure Doug would, he just wasn't a part of this conversation. If Lee wins, I will support him. If I win, Lee will support me. We will come together as a city, and we will have a Republican mayor in November.
Okay, so earlier we touched on water to a certain extent, but we focused more on storage, either aquifers or dams. Why not do both? But that's another issue. I want to talk about water conservation and how the huge amount of water that is wasted by cities by not maintaining their facilities properly or dumping sewage improperly and things like that. So to address the conservation side of the water issue, I'd like to start with Doug on that.
First of all, when I was in the middle of a water fight, and they settled a lawsuit that they sued me over because we kept winning, they wanted to settle. You remember when the two parties in the lawsuit, both parties have to agree? So one of the things I did, obviously, was give you a free mailer. 435 people, when I started, protested. 55,000 protested because I gave you the ability to protest easily. On conservation, I asked the city, why don't you come up with a plan of picking a panel of contractors that the individuals can pick and buy down the cost of putting in retrofit systems at a low water use. So I saw that happen in the 70s when the city put in programs for crime control. They put up bars on windows and security doors and that kind of stuff. They used CVTP money to do that. We could do that same thing with our enterprise account money to make the water use and the beautification of our neighborhoods to keep the same as they were when water was not as important a commodity as it is today. To even address that. Those are the things I'll approach.
We'll continue to ramp up our water conservation technology and make that an important part of our plan as a city. We've had some success in that area. We'll continue to push ahead.
For over 50 years, the city kicked the can down the road on water infrastructure. I had the courage and prodding from people like Doug, and Doug did help the process in the end. We needed a surface water treatment plant that can store and process 8 million gallons a day, that we can take 80,000 acre feet that we were sending away that we paid for before, we can now store that. We built a water reclamation the sewer treatment plant that can reclaim 25,000 acre feet. That's 1 year's water supply. That's a lot of water. We've got a purple pipe system that can deliver that water supply. So our investment in infrastructure, and by the way, the main three of the components of that infrastructure program came in $37 million below budget because of measures I put in by having an oversight board. We got, thanks to Steve Brandow, the entire bond financing of 1.6% by the state of California that'll save ratepayers $204 million over the life of the loan. That's a lot of money that we transferred to lower rates.
Thank you. Remember that today we're going to go out and get 5.5% interest rates before I started. Then they wised up and said they're going to get 1.6. So I helped out quite a bit on that. But the water plant, conservation, look, the water plant depends on river water. If there's no river water like there has been in a few years, those water plants will be sucking sand. Okay? So we need to start figuring out new technologies, and there are a lot of new technologies. You know something? The city won't even call them back. Because the water plant isn't for you. It's for a new town called Stega, where they want to add 100,000 people. Not for us. We're going to pay for it. But it's going to be for that new town.
Okay, so we've had this issue, and I've talked to, I'm a veteran, there's multiple veterans here. The current mayor has frequently been invited to participate in veterans events, and doesn't show up. Does not show up. And I haven't done this yet, so it's a little bit ambitiously, but I'm actually working with the National Desert Storm Desert Shield War Memorial. So I'll be coming to you and the rest of the city council for endorsement of that. So my question is, what is your position on being involved in the veteran community, and what is your position on endorsing the Desert Storm Memorial and helping me fundraise for it? Private money, of course, no government money. Thank you. Oh, that would start, I'm sorry, it'd start with H.
Well, I think anything that we can do to support our veterans and to support those that have served our country is incredibly valuable. And Kyle, the fact that you have indicated that this is privately funded and privately driven, all the better. I think that the biggest thing that we can do for our veterans from a city point of view is to keep pressure on these systems that deal with homelessness and deal with folks that are out on the street because of PTSD or other disability related. I work with cities across the country that are reducing crime, poverty, and violence in their cities. And there are models that are working in other cities that are much more effective in getting veterans into housing, and we're making progress in that area. My goal as the mayor is to make sure that that's done efficiently, effectively, and completely. Get veterans off the streets and into the care that they deserve.
Amen.
We have an obligation as a society, as individuals, to honor all the veterans that served in our country. I served 6 years in the Air National Guard, the 144th Fighter Wing that was called up in Desert Storm. As a city, we need to take an active role and respect and support our veterans. I personally would support them, and as a mayor or as a councilman, I've done that, and I would support all efforts to honor the contributions of our veterans.
When I was a county board, I supported bringing out the Veteran Vietnam Wall, the revolving show, and I was active in getting that to Fresno. I'm proud of it, and I will be proud to stand with you. In the city of Fresno, used to give the veterans the ability, if they had a Purple Heart, to get into our parks free. You know, they took that away. You have to be a Blue Star family or a Gold Star family. to be able to do that, or an active veteran. But they, for some reason, they decided, well, the folks with the Purple Heart don't count anymore. So, and then they raised the park rates on holidays like Easter and Cinco de Mayo and 4th of July, and they didn't really want to tell anybody until the last minute, until I brought it out a couple of times, and they finally said, oh yeah, by the way, your park rates are going up to $7 and $5. And senior citizens used to be free, no longer they're charging. I don't have a problem because they understand that they need the money, but what are our parks starting to look like? What are they doing with that money? That's my question. And the fact of it is, the Veterans Affairs, I've been very active in helping those folks out, and I will continue to do that.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and close out with closing statements. So we'll give you folks 1 minute each. Who's up next? Okay, so we'll start with you, 1 minute to close.
First of all, thank you for having the forum, and thank you to Tea Party for what you guys have done from the inception to wake up the American spirit about, people do care about fiscal responsibility and individual freedom. I think I've demonstrated, and what I've done, embodied all those types of philosophy on my term on the council. And I ask you really not to judge me by my promises. People can promise this, they can promise that, but judge me by my deeds. What I've done, my body of work over the last 7.5 years on the city, I think I've made a major contribution towards transforming this city to be fiscally responsible. By being fiscally responsible, you're taking care of the primary needs of public safety, parks, streets, all those things. But again, my vision is full economic recovery for this city, to put this city where it's never been, sustained under 10% unemployment. By doing that, we're going to raise the revenues to hire the cops we need, to hire the firemen, to have more parks, fix the potholes, all the things that are necessary for the quality of life in our city.
First of all, thanks for having us here. It's great. I'm proud to have been one of your first folks from back in 2009, back in the Fresno State parking lot there. And the Tea Party has taken on a mantra of sometimes too much criticism from the left, which is just slapstick comedy, because you folks are the backbone of our country. And we've lost our energy in our conservative movements because we feel beat upon. As your mayor, I want to revitalize that. I want to bring a vigor to conservatism as a mayor, okay? I want this town to know that we have a conservative movement in this town. And I, as an activist, have been that way for 50 years when I helped my dad save the old county courthouse, all the way up to these latest flags. I will not back down. I want to stand proud for this community and from the conservative side of this community, because it is where we can get things done.
I'm a part of a group of people that are sort of like the Marines. We're the first ones in and the last ones out. When we saw that crime was out of control in 1992, we didn't ask for government funds to do something about it. We moved our families into the highest crime, lowest income neighborhood in Fresno. And we pioneered a movement that resettled dozens of other people in that neighborhood, began to turn it around, and guess what? That didn't save the city. What begins to save the city is when market forces move in and people start building townhomes and lofts that are now rented at a 98% occupancy rate. When Bitwise moves onto that area, I bought 2 lighted blocks of downtown real estate, and over a period of years, through very difficult times, turned it around. It is beautiful. Bitwise says that that's why they moved down there. Now they have 100 tech companies. It's that type of private sector involvement, skin in the game, that the Tea Party is all about. You believe in that. It's kind of like the statement, mission first, people always. That's what you stand for. That's what I stand for. Thank you for being here tonight.
Let's give all these guys a big round of applause. Thank you guys so much. Don't go anywhere yet. So, first of all, I want to thank you all for coming on out. I appreciate everything you guys had to say. I don't think I heard anything that I was like, wow, what are we doing with this guy here? You guys have all got very conservative views and values, and I appreciate all of you.